The sky is the sky, and people are people, everywhere you go. You're listening to Lofi Poli Sci. Lofi Poli Sci podcast coming at you. Michael Pickering here talking about our famous question, what's going on in the world today? It's our end of the semester special episode, which means no one's going to listen to it because they don't have to. But we got that full lineup for you today, people. We got that Lo-Fi global news for you. We got that Metro New Orleans weather for the week. We got that weekend box office, some connected the dots, the music, the riddle for you, the story time. We got it all. So just sit back, relax for the next little while, and breathe. Let's go with that Lo-Fi Global. First up, let's travel to Sri Lanka for the updates there. We talked about how the country was in economic recession and protest had started calling for the resignation of the government, and in particular, the president and the prime minister. And protest outside the president's house had been severely repressed by state security forces, and the president ordered a countrywide state of emergency and curfew. And the latest? Prime Minister Rajapaksa has resigned, trying to ease the protesters. But it's not working. And if you're wondering, though, wait a second. I thought it was President Rajapaksa, not the Prime Minister, right? Well, you guessed it, they are brothers. Go figure. The people aren't happy with a government that's run by a family. And we'll keep you updated, peeps. Lots going on in Sri Lanka. Now let's head over to Iran. And this one isn't much more than a couple of sentences, but you know me and movie news. Well, I like to talk about it, so here we go. Mohammad Rasulov, a filmmaker from Iran, has posted a letter to his Instagram, signed by other industry people as well in the country, that the Iranian government had begun raiding and arresting people in the film industry there. But no word from the government on what this is all about. We don't know. We have no idea. Stay tuned, Lo-Fi listeners. We'll let you know more as we do, or you let us know if you hear something first. All right. Let's switch gears a bit with this next one and check out what's going down in Lithuania. So the Lithuanian government has officially declared Russia a terrorist state/country. Full stop. This is big. This is a first. And you see, this is not like the United States labeling a country a state sponsor of terrorists. This is a country labeling another country a terrorist country. This sets some precedent. And of course, this is all about Russia invading Ukraine. Now, we haven't really heard much coming back from Russia about this because, well, of course, they have their plate full with, invading another country and all. But I'm curious, will other countries follow Lithuania's path? Will other countries be added to this new kind of list? And what does this all mean for the world moving forward? Write in. I'm curious your thoughts. Next up, to the Philippines we go, where Bongbong Marcos, aka Ferdinand Marcos Jr., has apparently won the presidential election with about 59% of the vote, and it looks like Sara Duterte is likely to be the vice president. So, family seems to be a common theme today. Let's talk about it. Family. You see, Bongbong Marcos, president-elect, is the son of former dictator of the Philippines, Fernando Marcos. He was an asshole. Now his son is president. Sara Duterte, vice president-elect, is the daughter of the current president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. He's just a dick. Now his daughter is vice president. So look, I'm all about not automatically saying children are like their parents. Of course not. I couldn't be more different than mine, let me tell you. Just meet 'em/don't meet 'em. But I am curious to see how the son of a former dictator and the daughter of resident president asshole right now are going to be doing, teaming up to run the country for the next 6 years. I mean, again, kids are not their parents for sure, but damn, really? Well, here's to finding out. Eyes open on the Philippines, people. 6 years coming. And a last bit of that lo-fi global news, for the moment at least. Reminders about Lebanon and Somalia elections. Lebanon had parliamentary elections yesterday/today for me right now recording, and Somalia presidential elections going on. And as of now, I'm still waiting for results. I just read that Somalia's in their second round, so we'll see how much longer this takes. So you may hear something before you actually listen to this. It just depends on how it goes. We'll definitely be taking a deeper dive into these two winners as soon as they are announced, people. These are extremely important for those countries. Yes, indeed. But now let's switch gears again and get you that 5-day Metro New Orleans weather and the weekend box office report everyone always wants to know. Is it cloudy? With a chance of meatballs. We got you covered, Nola. Monday through Friday. It's hot as hell with a chance of afternoon showers. Welcome to summer in New Orleans. Lows in the 90s and mids in the 70s each and every single day, with a chance of meatballs ranging from 25% on Monday, Tuesday to 5 to 12% Wednesday to Friday. And that's your 5-day weather, Nola, but always remember, it is New Orleans. It could rain any day and every day, especially at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't forget to look outside before you walk outside. That's what I like to say. Now, what about that weekend box office report? Stop the music. To the box office we go. What did people check out at cinemas this weekend? And coming in at number 5, Everything Everywhere All at Once, with 3.3 million at the box. Number 4, Firestarter, with 3.8 million in ticket sales. Number 3, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, at 4.5 million. Get them coins, Sonic, or is it rings? Rings? Coins? I don't know. I haven't played Sonic in years. Number 2, The Bad Guys, at 6.8 million. And number 1, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness at 61 million its second weekend, and a grand 2-week total worldwide, $688 million. And will Doctor Strange top 1 billion? Will it beat Spider-Man's 1.8 billion? Right, and peeps, I'm curious your thoughts. All right, enough. Cue the music. It's time for that deep dive and connecting the dots. Connecting the dots, we go into one global news story, dig into the heart of it all, and then tell you why it all matters. And today, we're talking about global news media and you. Oh yeah, going straight at them today. Us versus them. Why it all matters. What we do versus the world. Round 1, let's go. All right, so this thing we do here, this lo-fi global news, this Lofi Poli Sci, we are media, full stop. So a lot of what is about to be said directly applies to us too. Just remember that. But let's start with, what is global news? Or rather, even more simply, what is news versus what are media and how are they connected? Oh, and P.S., media are, medium is. Data are, datum is. Now you know. Because when I say media are for the rest of this segment, I want you to know it's because media are. Media is a plural word. Medium is the singular of media. Anyway, last nerdation for the day, or we'll see how it goes. Anyway, what is news? It's a good question, right? A simple one. What is news? News is information. Simple as that. And as the word implies, it's new information. But generally, in order for us to characterize something as news or newsworthy, it has to be new and surprising. If it's just same old, like firefighter saves kitten from a tree, news companies don't report that. Global news is new and surprising information about the world. And Lofi Poli Sci, we focus on political development news around the planet. That's our niche. And playing lo-fi music whilst doing so, we roll how we want, when we want, and we just do our thing together. We have no limits, no bars, no bounds. We're also no profits, which greatly is related to all the above things that we just said. We are free. And because of that, we are free to report on whatever we like. But we are still media. We're simply free and independent in the podcast format that focus on planetary political development. However, and especially in the US, most media are not free and independent. In the US, the main media are almost exclusively corporations. In other Western democracies, it's a mix of media corporations and government-owned and operated media. And the government-owned and operated ones don't have to worry about profits as much, but they are more regulated by government and those that are in control of it. No doubt, no doubt. And the privately owned media corporations? Well, they are self-regulated, but regulated all the same. And a huge part of that regulation is the need for profits in order to keep the company going. Because it's a company, not a nonprofit organization. And all companies are made companies to make money. If a media corporation didn't want to make money, they'd simply be called a nonprofit organization, now you know. Or they would ask for government funding and then thereby be government-owned and operated. But whether government or privately owned, media companies are platforms to distribute news, information. Now, by today's standards only, and in very recent human history, in fact, media in Western democracies have espoused themselves with a job of keeping politics honest. A check, if you will, on accountability and transparency. And this is a very new development for media companies and only developed post-World War II in the Vietnam War era and the Watergate scandal era. Before that, media were little more than a mouthpiece of government. Period. And even today, looking across the 200 countries in the world, the vast majority of media in those 200 countries are all still mouthpieces for the government. Period. Governments control the living shit out of media messages. They control and censor the flow of information to the people because information is knowledge and knowledge is power, and governments be damned if the people have the power. So, no need to talk about them because we already know what's that bag of goods that they're selling. To media in Western democracies, though, what do we have today? Question mark? Well, everyone knows that the headlines in the past 2 years have been dominated by COVID-19, and the past 3 months by Ukraine and Russia. When you click the world or international section, there they are, just waiting for you. And what's more that's waiting for you is negative coverage, negative news of the horrible things going on, focused mainly on those two things. Now, lately, global coverage has been expanding a bit, but still mainly focused on the horrible things going on in the world today. Now, why is that? Question mark. Why always the bad and never the firefighter and the kitten in the tree story? Question mark. And it's a very simple answer. It's because it's what we watch and what we click on. Views, ratings, logarithms, consumer demands. The market demands negative news, and thus the market is provided negative news. Negative news sells. People look at more pictures of bombings than they do of kittens in tree. Tragedy gets clicks, and those clicks get counted, and those counts get interpreted as keep producing more of that kind of content to keep the numbers up, to keep advertising sales up, to keep the profits high, to keep the corporation afloat. Truth. Now, let me counter myself. Is it important to talk about all the horrible things going on in the world? Yeah, and we do our fair share of it as well, no doubt, no doubt. You can't fix a problem if you don't address a problem. You can't help people if no one knows people need help. But there is another effect of all of this. And it's the effect that people tend to believe that the world is all doom and gloom. Because all they see in media is doom and gloom. It's depressing, it's demoralizing, and it makes people think. That's just the way it is. Media focusing on only a handful of countries and stories sets our agenda by making us think that these are the most important. Media framing of those stories in a negative way all the time primes us to think when asked what's going on in the world today. Doom and gloom. You see that media tagline, that media possess an obligation to report on the truth and let the people know and blah, 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 blah. And if it's doom and gloom, then it's doom and gloom because they're just reporting the truth. And Media and media corporations in free Western democracies have no obligations at all. Period. What do I mean? Take the United States, for example. In our Constitution, it says that we are to have a free press and freedom of speech. It says nothing about media or the press having any obligation to be a check on government corruption, to relay the truth to the public, or to inform voters on important issues to vote on or who to vote for. All of that, media companies take onto themselves. They don't have to do it. A media company can have the tagline, "Freest and unbiased news in America." But that does not mean they have to actually provide free and unbiased news. Media are free to do what they please, to report on what they please, to set the agenda as they please, to frame stories as they please, and to prime us to think as they please. Now, if that ain't some scary enough shit for you, we once again have to turn this conversation inward and reflect on ourselves, and as we are media. And just as all media, we here at Lofi Poli Sci do most certainly have an agenda. We have our own self-imposed guidelines and regulations, though we more regularly break them as we please. But those agendas and regulations directly affect the news content that we cover. Rule number 1. Lofi Poli Sci was created for my students. They always come first when considering news content. Period. Lofi Poli Sci was created as a way for me to keep in touch with them and let them hear my voice no matter where they are in the world, because we all went into lockdown and got separated from each other. But that simple enough premise means, and translates to, a lot of times I choose global news stories that correspond with topics that we're covering in our class to help illustrate the political science theories that we're learning about in the books, but to bring them to life in the world around us. Like talking about parliamentary systems and how they work in a democracy in comparison to presidential systems. Talk about this a lot in my classes. And Pakistan this semester just happened to have a perfect example of this in the real world this semester. So I talked about Pakistan a few times to illustrate to students how the process works in a parliamentary system, and to keep them updated and engaged in it, and to even quiz them on it a bit later. Maybe even a little test question. But that's just one example of how our news story selection is biased toward what we need from our classes. Rule number 2. Lofi Poli Sci was also created because as lockdown went into effect, COVID dominated global news headlines, and you couldn't get anything else. But lots else was still taking place, of course. Just wasn't getting reported on. So we said no to COVID news. And that is most certainly a biased choice on our part, for sure. Rule number 3. Since we lived in the US and Western media, as well as our own, focused on the US so much, I have a tendency to stay away from the US news, and I try to focus on the rest of the world. That's most certainly a biased choice again. And I most certainly have a bias in my belief that universal human rights, they're good things. And that bias shows through in a lot of our discussions. Even from earlier in the show when I called Marcos and Duterte a dick and an asshole, respectively. That's a major fucking bias right there. And it gets down to who I am and who we are to talk about them and what's going on in the world today in the fashion that we do. The we that we be is Lofi Poli Sci, and my name is human. We are voices, and we steal the waves in the air, and we never give them back. And we are free, and we have a purpose. And our purpose, here at Lofi Poli Sci, or in all my classes, remain the same. I wear my bias on my sleeve, so you know. I show you what's going on in the world today, so you can choose how you view it, if it means anything to you at all, or if you will even do anything about it. I show you what's going on in the world today because 7.75 billion people in the world, they all matter to me. I feel that connection. I feel it right now. Every time my mic goes red and we start recording, I feel my people. I feel you. So I show you the things that I see and say do with it what you will. The choice is yours. Lo-Fi Global matters. Lofi Poli Sci matters because you matter. We're not talking about random stories and random people. We're telling our stories. And that, my friends, is connecting the dots, Lofi Poli Sci style. We'll be back in a minute, so just breathe to the tunes. A Lofi Poli Sci original for you, so you know I'm here. For you, so you know I'm here. Yes, indeed, I'm always here for you people. We all are. And we're going to cut away for another bit of a second for a bit of a conversation, a bit of a trade off with one of our good friends. Gregory Day of Hipsville, AD. Thank you for coming back. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Why don't you lay out for all the listeners at home how this trade-off works?
Yeah, it's our weekly or maybe monthly sometimes. Who knows? We'll just do this
Right,
whenever we want to because it's always great talking. It is a little music trade-off. So something that I really like, I'm gonna pass over to you to see if you dig it, and then vice versa. And so we kind of talk about each of the pieces and what they mean to us, and then as a new listener, our first thoughts on the thing.
Exactly. You want to go first or second? What you want to
Yeah,
do?
I'll go first. Yeah, I was sticking with the long-standing tradition. Um, you switch things up for me, so just want to kind of
I
make sure
did.
that's clear to listeners. So a little change in continuity here. So I'm going to be talking about the Samurai Champloo introduction theme. This is the opening credit theme. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I have no excuse for never seeing Samurai Champloo, because it's so close to everything else that I've seen anime wise. It was an Adult Swim show around the time. It was on Adult Swim around the time that I was watching Adult Swim heavily. So I don't know how I missed it. So, but I have no excuses for my actions. But yeah, this tune just brought a lot of nostalgia back for me. It has a great it's a great instrumental hip hop track. It's a great lo-fi track. It's the kind of melding of anime and hip hop that early 2000s kind of feel. It's what it's exactly like in my zone of like what I love about instrumental hip hop and what I love about that era of like cross cultures of anime and coming to America and kind of
Right.
yeah, and then like it just reminds me of that time of like the golden era of Adult Swim for me at least, where it was just all these different kind of like things kind of melding from the like cartoons from the 60s, and there's just like the great underground hip hop stuff coming in, and then all the imports of Japanese anime. And so this track is kind of reminiscent of like the beats that the RZA or MF Doom or Madlib would make. And I can't specifically say I know that who did this because I was kind of looking online some a little conflicting information about who the composer is, but I've seen it's either called Battle Cry or the other side of Phase. But in any event, it's a great track that's got this incredibly complex beat with these like free jazz piano kind of floating over that, and this dreamy synth tones also kind of coming in, and it just really gets me ready to watch whatever kick-ass show this is going to be that comes after this, because it's just got me nodding my head and just ready to watch something really cool. And yeah, so you definitely got me intrigued that I should be watching this show, which is almost 20 years old at this point. But yeah, so tell me why you picked this, other than turning me on to something really really cool that I had not heard before.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it right though, because the previous track that I had given you for this week was like a lo-fi mix of a different anime intro. But then I was like listening to some music, and some lo-fi covered this, and it was like a lo-fi version of this. Although in many ways, even the very intro song itself, in its true form that played at the beginning of the anime, is very lo-fi. So I was like, you know what? I want to go with this one. And I've said it here before. I've said it other places. I love anime. I have since I found it as an early teen, or as since someone shown it to me. But in my teen years, I was like just introduced to everything anime, and there is so much out there. Like anime goes back to the 1980s, and maybe even a little bit before that in Japan. But like really, a lot of it is geared towards kids. And I mean, of course, it's cartoons. Why shouldn't it be? But still, even in my early teens, and as I got older in my mid and late teens, there was still a lot of content that throughout the years was animated geared towards older audience. But at one point, you hit the saturation market, or the saturation point of you've consumed all the really good anime and for older audiences, and all the new stuff, for the most part, was either geared towards younger audiences or was geared towards a different audience, and really wasn't what I was looking for. So there was like a while where anime was just kind of absent. There was this void of it in my life. But then, like you talked about in the early 2000s, and Samurai Champloo comes out in 2004, and this one's geared straight towards an adult audience, like without a doubt. So it takes place in feudal Japan. Two Ronin and a woman that don't know each other team up to go on an adventure. And like seriously, this is an adult anime. They don't really have any nudity or anything like that in it, because it played on Adult Swim on cable TV. But there's like a lot of sword fighting and blood and killing. But it's like this intricate story of three different strangers and how their lives crisscross, and what feudal Japan was like, but mixed in with this complete hip hop culture that was coming out of the US at the time. And like you said, in the early 2000s, was being mixed and melted with this Japanese culture. And this intro just kind of sets you up for it. And it's so cool, because in hip hop, they use a lot of turntables and scratching and mixing. And the actual anime does it as well. Like they'll do time jumps, and they'll actually like rewind, visually make you watch them rewind the episode, and then like they'll scratch turntables to cut scenes. And it's like they just really use the hip hop influence mixed with kind of a traditional feudal Japan anime to create something completely different. And to me, the mixing of hip hop culture and music with Japanese culture, I mean, it's just amazing. Like you said, this hits me on so many different levels. So whenever I got into it and I started hearing it, I was like, this is amazing. And there's so many other musical choices out there, like you named quite a few, that you could really see the Japanese influence on hip hop culture and vice versa. So whenever I heard this track not too long ago, I was like, you know what? Let's talk about this one. And I mean, I love it. Even after nearly 20 years, this is still one of my favorite anime intros ever. It's just a really great song, and a great example of cross culture in music and, different media. So I figured,
Yeah.
why not revisit it with you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it definitely has that same vibe. I think we were talking a little bit about Cowboy Bebop, which I'm very familiar with. And
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, it's related, right? For the creatively to the same people.
So
Um,
yeah, and the
mhm.
artistic styles are very, very
Yeah.
similar.
Mhm.
But Cowboy Bebop predates this by several
Right,
years.
right. Yeah. So yeah, just that. Yeah, it definitely got my attention immediately. Kind of in that same vein of just like a piece of music that just grabs your attention immediately from the opening credit scene, and which is very important for a television show in any regards, like whatever kind of television show you have, like it just catches your attention immediately and draws you into whatever this show is going to be about. And I think it also kind of lays down in a weird way, not explicitly, but like kind of lays down what kind of emotional maturity you're about to see in this show, because it definitely isn't telegraphing that this is for younger audiences or that this is going to be a comedy. Right. Yeah, it definitely is like, here is something that's going to be thought-provoking and that's going to be a little heady probably. So yeah, this is a great track, my friend. Thank you for sharing it.
For sure, for sure. And I would say one last thing before we switch over to yours is that you're right. It's foretelling in a few different ways, because it's also a portion, not the whole thing, but a portion of the anime is very much dealing with Western influence coming into Japan and
okay.
how Japanese culture had to start to deal with that. And the intro is like the melting of the cultures. And so, like you said, it kind of foreshadows that. It's part of the story is how did Japan deal with that? And if you look back at the history, it's a pretty challenging time for Japan. Without going into it, it was a rough era.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, and let's go ahead and talk about yours. You want me to jump on first?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, now the song you wanted me to listen to is Black Hills by the Budos Band. Is that how you pronounce it?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah, the Budos Band. And let me tell you, my friend, I loved this 4 minute and 32-second track. Like, I really did. And it kind of seemed like it was broken up into two pieces, like you had a bit of a bridge in the middle. And to me, it also felt like you could easily make this lo-fi, because some of it was repetitive, but in like a way that draws you in. And just, the jazz, the funk, the soul, the horns, the guitar, the bass, the drums. I mean, everything worked for me in this track, and completely instrumental. Like, I love that about it. But it most certainly, it talks to you as you listen to it, which I find good instrumentals, they really do. They don't need words to grab you and to tell you a story. And in many ways, it kind of lets you tell your own story and just think through your thoughts, but in the way that the musicians are feeling it. I could listen to this on repeat. I really could. I loved it so much. But I want to hear a little more from you, because like I do all the times, I don't research the band. I like to hear, your take and give us a bit of a background about who the Budos Band are and everything about that. And we can talk about it more after. So go ahead.
Yeah. So this is a band. They're from America. I believe they're from New York. I could be wrong. And I actually don't know too much about the actual band, but they're on the Daptone record label, which is one of my favorite record labels currently going. They've been around for maybe 20 years or more. So, but the record label itself is heavily involved in like the funk and soul revival of the 21st century. Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, probably the most famous band on that record label, and they've got a ton of other great artists on there. But Budos Band is a band that kind of stuck out to me because they're a purely instrumental funk band. And I believe this track is on the record Burnt Offerings, which is their fourth record, I believe. But most everything before this was just straight funk and Afrobeat influences, but all instrumental. Everything they've done is instrumental. And when you get to this record, they start having this heavy metal and psychedelia influence on it. So the guitars get really fuzzy, things get really stretched out and airy and spacey. And this particular track, I think, is my favorite off of that record, because it just has this strange hypnotic quality to it, but also it's very mournful at times, and it's almost like inspirational at times. Like it feels like you're being propelled forward on some kind of journey. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just like this really heavy, funky tune that's just super thick. And yeah, I find that their experimentation with the psych elements and the heavy metal influence, which I've read it, they said that they were very influenced by heavy metal, but it doesn't really show musically if anyone's trying to imagine what a funky heavy metal outfit sounds like.
Right.
Yes, it's just like this darkness to it, in a way that I think that's what that influence is. But yeah, I love this band. They're like one of my favorite current bands. The record after this is hip hop influence, so it's a little more heavy on the drum side and the beat side of it than it is maybe on this record, where it's heavier on the guitar side. But yeah, just solid band that is taking these funk influences and doing something really, really cool and interesting with them in the modern time.
I I dig it, and the fact that you now tell me that all their music they put out is instrumental, like, makes me think even more of the world of them because making good instrumental music is incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Like, for instance, just like to give a quick, I don't know, maybe reference point for listeners out there on how hard it is to make instrumental music. Think about all the music that you hear coming out right now, last year, the year before that. How many of your favorite songs or just like the top listened to pieces of music were instrumental? The answer is going to be almost none of them because lyrics draw you in a different way, but lyrics also, in many ways, they cover up the fact that a lot of the music we listen to, it's repetitive beats, it's repetitive guitar lines, it's repetitive drum lines. Like if you take some of your favorite songs and completely delete the lyrics, it changes them completely. And a lot of them I find they wouldn't necessarily stand on their own. Like if you would have just tried to release it as a musical track, it would have never hit. So if you as a musician can put out all your albums and all your tracks as just instrumentals, man, that's incredibly difficult. It really is.
Yeah, yeah. And like it's totally not top 40 friendly or anything like that. Um,
Right, right.
yeah, yeah. So I mean it's truly something to be, it's an accomplishment to be a successful band if it's just like, everything you're doing is just compositions.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from like my own experience making lo-fi tracks for Lofi Poli Sci, even with different loops and samples and cuts and one beats and one shots, like in hundreds of thousands of free use pieces of music that I can use to combine to make something completely original, it is still exceedingly difficult to make a lo-fi track that is not too repetitive, but that still carries for like a few minutes. And to know that an artist does this for multiple tracks over an entire album for multiple albums and all their original work, dude, that's an accomplishment. Much respect to Budo Span. I love this piece, man. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, yeah. I will say just one more thing about, I guess, the funk influence is that, yeah, there's a ton of funk music that has lyrics to it, whether it's James Brown or any of the people that followed him, or like Sharon Jones,
Hmm.
which is I think one of the best of the new century. But there's a ton of influence of just instrumental, or like the beginning of hip hop, where it was like taking these old James Brown tracks and stretching them out into longer
Right,
pieces
right.
for clubs and house music and stuff like that. So um yeah, there's like a whole culture that kind of goes with that stuff. And even like if you listen to some like old James Brown or like Maceo Parker records and stuff, there's always like those instrumental tracks, but there's always someone kind of on the track, um you know kind of repeating some kind of lyrical message, even though if it isn't like a solid strong structure of like chorus in verse, chorus verse, or whatever. But yeah, I think that all that kind of leads into this lineage of culture of doing these like house music, and or like specifically for dancing. But you have something like this where it's taking it even further into a more cerebral space or emotional space than just dance music.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, like I said, I'm gonna check out more of this artist or this
Yeah.
band to be sure. Lots of good stuff there. All right, Gregory Day, what do you have for me next time?
I'm taking you to a weird place next time we do this.
Oh
Uh,
goodness, what do we have?
I'm taking you all the way back in time to the late 1950s. I'm giving
What?
you a track called "Return to Paradise" by Martin Denny. This is a exotica track. I'm intrigued to hear what you're gonna think about it.
Martin Denny,
Yes, sir.
Return to Paradise,
Yes,
1950.
it's I think 58, really, but yeah, this is
Interesting,
yeah, it's
interesting.
music of its time.
All right, all right.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued.
yeah, yeah. What you got for me?
And yeah, for you, I actually had a hard time, and I'll be honest, I could change this one up for you next time too, because like with it's final exams and final papers and all this stuff, I'm like all over the place with my music, and sometimes I'll feel this, and sometimes I'll feel that, and la la la.
Mhm.
La. And so today, what I'm giving you, with an asterisk that it may change, um, "Ashes" by the Longest John,
Longest John.
the Longest Johns.
Oh, Johns. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll send you the exact one. I'll text you for sure.
Right on.
Yes, indeed. Now I'm curious because that's a curious track, so it'll make for an interesting episode to be sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And all you listening out there, send in your thoughts and maybe why not send us some of your music that you want us to check out? That could be an interesting little mix to the show as well. And Gregory Day, until the next trade off, turn it up and play it loud.
Take care, my friend.
And it's back in a second, Lo-Fi listeners. Yes, indeed. I always love some funky freshness right there. And big thanks to Gregory Day of Hipster Lady for coming talk music with us. But now, it's time for that. No, Lo-Fi Global Trivia. It's time for Riddlevia. And what is Riddlevia? Have you forgotten already? Well, remember, it's like a selfie, but not. Riddlevia number 1. Which word in the dictionary is always spelled incorrectly? Which word in the dictionary is always spelled incorrectly? And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Survey says incorrectly. Riddlevia number 2. What can you hold in your right hand, but never in your left hand? What can you hold in your right hand, but never in your left hand? And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Riddlevia says your left hand, of course. Riddlevia number 3. What has 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? What has 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sphinx says humans. Or Oedipus. There's an academic debate for you. Riddlevia number 4. What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the chicken or the egg? And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Science says. Oh, you waiting, huh? Come now. The answer to this is common science sense. It's just, in culture today, people still like to use that old-ass, lame-ass saying, oh, well, that's a chicken or the egg situation. And what's sadly true is that most people just don't realize science figured that out a long time ago. The egg came first. Now you know. And Riddlevia number 5. What do you call doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results? You know, simply insane. We'll talk about changing things up soon enough. Let's take a quick trip to the airport whilst I get my hydration on. Peeps, back in a second. Yes, indeed. So many of you heading out to the airport now that the semester is over. Safe travels out there, my friends. Safe travels. All right, let's tune the music in and then turn it down. It's Lo-Fi Storytime with Pickering. Each storytime I'm going to give you a piece of me, a story from my life. And for today, I want to tell you a story of me graduating university. Undergraduate, that is. We'll save the others for another story time. But I've told you how it all started, the working 2 jobs and starting part-time, then moving away to university, sleeping on the couch for a year, and the working on a ranch, and blah, blah, blah. But now, as so many of you are moving on and graduating yourself, thought it only fitting I tell you how the story went for me. So, spoiler not spoiler, you know I'm old, this story will date me a little bit better for you, though how much so is yet to be seen. Fall of 2009. I started my last year of undergraduate, and I had no clue what I was going to do with myself after graduation. No clue whatsoever. That fall semester passed fast and hardcore, like getting my GPA up as much as I could, studying all the time, being random in the library and shouting at friends who were sitting right next to me so everyone would just stare at us. And I never liked the too quiet of a library kind of lifestyle. No. But the library was my jam. It was our place of choice to study. I just like being loud. That's just me, of course. And of course, I did a lot of other things throughout that entire year to celebrate the culmination of what was my 7 years of undergraduate. We'll come back to that one later. But by December of the fall semester, I decided that since I didn't know what I was going to do, I'd go to graduate school because why not? P.S. I never suggest anyone goes to graduate school as a default for nothing better to do. Never do as I did. P.S.S. It's also why I don't tell you everything I did. But by December, I decided, but then quickly found out a lot of graduate school deadlines for the applications were done, and that there were few choices found. But I did find several that still had the application deadlines that were yet to come, and quite a few really good ones. But then I waited, and I played, and I procrastinated, and I just spent time with my friends. We had a huge social circle in undergrad that was centered around the apartment I lived in. There were 4 of us roommates, and everyone was edited out. Nope, keeping it in. Everyone in the apartment. See, that's funny. Now I want to go on a different tangent because you know how much editing I do to make everything sound so seamless, but then anyway, not editing. Staying in this time because there's only 5 of you that are going to be listening to this anyway, because everyone's like finals are done, or this isn't going to be on the final anyway, and so blah 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 blah. That's really me going on a tangent. Maybe I will edit this out. To edit or not to edit. On a side note, Shakespeare, what a bunch of bullshit. Was Shakespeare even real? I don't think so. Shakespeare was many people, not just one person. Or Shakespeare got stuff from other people who helped contributing. Therefore, Shakespeare is an accumulation of knowledge and stories from that time, not just one person. Who knows? Anyway, maybe I should edit all this out. I'm not going to. It's staying in. So anyway, big social circle, and there was 4 of us that lived in the same apartment, and everyone was in relationships, so there was just always a ton of people, and we always had friends, and those friends had friends, and just our apartment was the center of social life for us. It was pretty crazy, but we were really, really studious as well. We had massive study groups, and like I said, we all jammed at the library all the time. So come January, I had to choose where I was going to apply. Where did I want to live? Where did I want to go to school? What I want to do? Where were my friends going? Where would I live? Where would I work? How would I survive? It was a big question mark. And I decided to apply to only one place, to just roll that dice. And I said, if I get in, I get in. And if I don't, I'll figure it out during the summer. Really, I look back at that and I'm like, that is so senioritis of the highest order, to just kick it down the road even further. It's like graduation, I'll figure it out after. But anyway, I applied in February of 2010 and was set to graduate in May, just a couple months later, and all my friends started getting accepted into law school, nursing school, med school, Teach for America. Others who were not graduating were all scheduling classes for the fall semester, and it was just like everyone except for me was planning the next stage in their life. And by April, still not having heard anything, I was scared as shit. I didn't want to go and graduate and just have no plans at all. Everyone else had something else going on, something planned, and I had no clue. So I just focused on what I could, spending time with my friends that I knew I wouldn't necessarily see for a long time. And some of them I may never see again. Though if that's true, we never really know the answer to that, so long as we're still breathing. Am I right? But finally, in the end of April, just 3 weeks before graduation. I had enough. I called the university that I applied to. I got redirected a few times and finally found out I was accepted. They just hadn't sent out the letter yet to let me know that I was in. And let me tell you, the relief that I felt, unexplainable. Though for many of you graduating, I bet you know exactly what I'm talking about. For all those emotions I just described. But here's something I figured out a bit later down the road. And it's really directed to all you graduates, but especially those of you who don't have a plan. Live. That's the only plan that matters. It doesn't matter where you go or what you do. Just live. Life isn't a race. It's not a game. You're not a contestant. Life is you, and what you do is completely up to you. Being happy is all that matters. Having a smile on your face, that's a win. If someone ever asks you, well, what you got planned after graduation? And you reply, I'm just gonna live for a while, and then they give you some smug look like, oh geez, another college grad that's just gonna wander around aimlessly and be a drag on society and blah 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 blah. Walk away. Don't even reply. Don't even think of them ever again. Because the world those people are living in isn't our world. And we don't play by their rules. We make our own rules. And then in the truest of true forms, we break those rules and make new rules because life is about living and learning and we all change and grow. Never get suckered into a career or a job that you don't like. And if you do, change it. There is no rule that we have to follow or that says that we have to live one lifestyle and have one job for all of our life. We evolve. We better ourselves. We change. And let me tell you, graduating undergraduate and moving to a new city and starting graduate school was the beginning of the most monumental of changes for me. But that's a different Lo-Fi story time. We'll be right back with some news to close us out, so chill with some tunes. Another Lofi Poli Sci original mix. Ready for reality. Yeah, we're back with the last couple pieces of news to send you on your way for the day. Out in Bolivia, South America, a new program is starting up in prisons to help encourage inmates to make good use of their time. And the program is called Books Behind Bars. And if inmates enlist in this reading program, they can get time off of their sentence. I dig it. Way to go, Bolivia. And in San Diego, California, a baby giraffe gets leg braces to help it walk properly and survive. Help the effort people save the giraffes. I love this story so much. And in more California news because, well, why not? All the environmental news lately we hear is doom and gloom, but not this next one. It is one of hope. The state of California is reporting that on May 8th, the entire state's energy needs, on that specific day only, mind you though, but were met by energy produced via renewable sources such as wind and solar. I dig it, I dig it. And no, it's not every day and there's still work to be done, but hey, it's a step in the right direction. And scientists out at the University of Florida have grown plants in moon soil. Interesting. So we can start farming on the moon, right? You know what this means? One step closer to that Luna Lo-Fi University. Yes, indeed, my friends. And some last bit of housekeeping news for us here at Lofi Poli Sci. Say goodbye to long form Mondays. This was our last one, people. We're going back to short form for the summer. And although Movie List with Gregory Day like tomorrow will still be long form, but other than that, we're going back to our roots, short and sweet with that Lo-Fi Global. And look out for some new segments coming your way this summer as well. And this week we'll stick to our 3-day-a-week schedule like we've been doing, but coming very, very soon, maybe, just maybe, we'll be switching back to that OG 5 days a week of Lofi Poli Sci. We'll let you know. And that's a brief snapshot of what's going on in the world today. Right into the show and check us out on lofipolisci.com. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, myself on LinkedIn. Connect to us, people. And Friday's blog post is up on the website. Give it a quick read. And it's not a cliche or a catchphrase. It's a lifestyle. Always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Talk to you next time, Lofi listeners. Pickering, signing off. A little behind the scenes for all you listeners that stuck around. Well, if that wasn't exhausting, I don't know what is. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing long form episodes this season, but damn, I'm excited to be getting back to short forms. You know? And keep in touch. Let me know what you think about the difference between the long form and the short form. It was a big difference for me. On the behind the scenes side of it, really, the long form episodes take a ton of work to do. Like my entire Sunday is dedicated to long form Monday shows. From almost waking up to going to bed almost, really. So it's going to be nice to have my Sundays back. Keep in touch, people. I'll talk to you soon.